Hello everyone, and welcome back to Building the Adventure with episode 2. Hi, how are we? I am doing reasonably well. We'll see how we go with this. Look, I know I usually do these kind of things in the morning, but for those of you who were here this morning, or who are watching this a little bit later, after discussions with some friends of mine, it kind of came to my knowledge that doing these kind of education / development things early in the morning were fucking with me a lot. So instead, I'm going to be doing them in the evening, where I tend to work a little bit better. My brain tends to be going a little bit weller. God, I'm really making the case for this, aren't I? Absolutely. Just retuning the music a little bit. There we go. Alright. So, we're going to see how OBS does with all this. If I get because it crashed on me earlier, so if I get another crash, we'll see how we go. But I do have a lot of things open, but I kind of have to for what we're going to be doing. Now, as a quick means of kind of doing the backstage stuff, I don't know how long this stream is going to go for. I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to try to squeeze like 2 hours out of it. If we only get like an hour out of it and we're done, that's fine. I'm happy with that. If we only get half an hour or 2 hours, it really doesn't matter to me. I have a purpose for tonight that I want to get done, and I want to get it out on YouTube, and we'll see how we'll go from there. All that said, for those who missed the first episode of Building the Adventure, we went over a methodology that I use for building campaigns and adventures called meta, macro, and micro. And in that, I use that in order to help me create the adventures and campaigns that I use in my homebrew stuff. Also for how I do things in a more professional capacity when I'm trying to design new characters and creatures, etc., etc. Now, as by way of somewhat of a review, the meta is your kind of mission statement. It is how you... It is a one word, it's like a one phrase, one sentence, a quick statement that basically covers, hey, this is the concept, this is the idea I want to cover. For what we are designing here, the phrase that I'm using is, the heroes stood before a dragon. Now, by using that as my kind of statement for the adventure that I'm designing, for the campaign that I'm designing, it means that whenever I have a question of what to do next, of what to write next, of what direction I should be taking it, I can always look back to that and go, okay, the hero stood before a dragon, so how do I pull the entire thing back to that? Now, the macro is the steps, of course, where you kind of go through the step-by-step process of getting to the end goal for your campaign. In the terms of, I believe I used the descriptor for if you were doing a campaign about, let's punch God. It's a case of, well, the macro steps are, finding where God is, how to punch God, the means with which to punch God, and these are all the steps that you get to before you get to your big bad, where you actually punch God themselves. Now, all that said, I covered that in a previous video. I believe it is up on YouTube now, so you can check that out. Click the link tree intro and all that other stuff. But as for tonight, what we started to do with the campaign last time is we did actually start setting up our creatures and the things that they'll be fighting. Now, I put out a kobold scout for what I would be theoretically using for our initial village attack. Or hell, even a kobold warrior for that matter. Now this is fine, but one of the things that I really struck on, and I really want to continue to strike on, is the fact that when you're fighting minions and things like that, I don't like restricting them to a singular ancestry. This is something of a personal thing, and it's not something that I expect anyone else to kind of go through or apply themselves, but I feel like a better methodology, and it's probably the methodology I'm going to be showing tonight, is building creatures around a singular idea as opposed to a singular ancestry. What I mean by that is it's not a kobold warrior, it's a dragon cult warrior or a dragon cult minion. And instead of having art that specifically depicts our boy here, we would have their cult uniform. And it means that we could have what ancestry they are doesn't matter. It is the fact that they are representing an ideal, they are representing a concept, and that is why you are up against them. Not because of their ancestry, but because of who they're fighting for. They're not evil because they serve a dragon, they're not evil because they're kobolds. They're evil because they willfully signed up to fight alongside a evil dragon. That's kind of what I want to drive at. So, by way of that, what I want to get through with Purpose Built is I want to go through a simple process of creating a couple of minions that you can use through your campaigns that should take you through a fair chunk of it, at the very least. And to begin with, it is a simple case of, well, before I get too far ahead of myself, for those of you who are watching this a little bit later, a lot of this advice is going to be more for those of us who are running and writing for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. D&D monster crafting and developing stat blocks and things like that is something that is a little bit more nebulous, and there's a lot of other videos that go through it a little bit more in depth. But for our purposes, I kind of want to focus on Pathfinder 2nd Edition because I feel it is underserved in that regard. And so we're pretty much going to be going through kind of the methodology for what I do with that. Now, to begin with, for one thing, let's switch over to a different thing. Beautiful. So we have the PDF and we have Foundry. Excellent. That is working well so far. Let's hope we don't get a crash. Now, I'm probably not going to be doing any art for these guys just to begin with, but we're going to be getting a Dragon Cultist, 0. They're not a player character. They're an NPC. Create actor. Now, I put this in 0 because I want to indicate what level I'm kind of aiming for with these guys. So immediately, 0. Humanoid. We're also going to get it from the dragon trait. Now, the reason I am putting them at level 0 is quite simply, if you're introducing your players to a new creature type or a new consideration, one of the best things you can do is give them a through line. And one of the best ways to give them a through line is to have reoccurring creatures or reoccurring enemies that they will fight over and over again. Now, with our guys here, if we set them on 0, that means I can put them at weak and cover them from -1. So for our first level adventure, I can put them up against a bunch of -1 versions, so weak. And for when they start getting to a higher level, I could switch it over to being elite. Now, my general advice with this, when you're doing it, is to do it at every even level. So, for instance, for our purposes, we'll have 0 to 4. So we'll have a creature at a dragon cultist at level 2, and we'll have a dragon cultist at level 4. The idea being, we can apply the elite and the weak templates as needed and kind of show a progression. To begin with, however, now let's hope this doesn't crash OBS, because we're going to zoom in. What you're seeing on the right there with the PDF is your base roadmaps for doing monster creation. The idea here is Paizo was like, look, we understand that people are going to be wanting to make their own creatures, their own characters, that kind of things for their own campaigns. So we want to provide you with the tools with which to do it. They did this with the Game Mastery Guide. They did it again for the remaster version. It's been super great. I do like the remaster version a little bit better, but that's just because I feel like it's a little bit easier to understand. With this, however, with our base roadmap, you'll notice that it has a bunch of options for a brute, a magical striker, a skill paragon, a skirmisher, a sniper, a soldier, and a spellcaster. These are all well and good, but I also don't want any of these for our minions. I want another option. Because, you know, I'm never satisfied with the base options. I want one that is a minion, a hireling, a thug. Hey Jarich, how you doing? I want a creature that does the job of a fighter or a soldier or something like that, but I specifically want them kind of designed around the idea of this is going to be an easy to beat creature. This is a minion. This is something of little to no consequence whatsoever. So, our starting point with that, because we'll go back over. I just realized a problem. That's fine. We'll work that out later. Bring it back to that. I am going to have to bring this back over to the foundry for reasons later. Doing well, was watching Supernatural, then realized I was missing an important stream. I'm glad you feel it's important. Is this it? Is this what? You're gonna have to help me out here. This is gonna be something of an educational development stream. I'm not gonna be playing much in the way of, I'm not gonna be playing any video games. Look, if you want me to, force me to name an NPC, now is probably one of the better times to do it, yeah. Particularly if you want to start naming dragons. Especially if you want to give them, like, dumb names. You have two, oh god. Well, while you're doing that, we're going to start. So, the attribute modifier scales, oh god, look, these don't matter, and they haven't mattered for a very long time. But for the purposes of this, we're gonna go 2, 2, 2. What's that? They're all gonna be 2s? Actually, I want to set that to 0. Because in Pathfinder 2nd edition, your attribute modifiers don't matter a hell of a lot. Now, these guys are guards, but I want them to be mooks, so they're going to have a perception of +6. I have 2. I need some context, please. I'm a bit behind. There'll be dumb names, of course, but it's got to relate still. Okay, so I'm currently designing a 4-level Avenger, so levels 1 to 4. And the whole idea is that the players will be fighting a series of dragons. Like, the entire campaign's focus and gist of the whole thing will be fighting dragons. Now, currently we have Jabraxis the Ineffable, who will be our big bad. But otherwise, the rest of them have not been named. So I have a Jungle Drake, a Shadow Drake, a Wyvern, and a Flame Drake. So, Perception 6, because I want it to be about moderate. What you're going to see when I'm going through and just making all this up is it's going to be a lot of moderates to lows. For instance, skills. Now, one of the things, this is kind of more of a personal foible than anything else like that, but I always get really annoyed when you'll be going through, you'll get an NPC stat block, and it won't have things like athletics or intimidation. Things that have base, like things that just have base usages. Like, I want to be able to trip someone and I need athletics, and I just hate it when they don't have that as an option. We're also going to have deception. And just because it's fun and zesty, we're also going to have dragon. So we have our skills. Moderate 15. Now, for those of you who know the kind of the DC by level charts, you'll also notice that a lot of these numbers that are coming up for moderate are the DC 15 that you get for a first level character. Tabraxis is my baby. My baby will cause TPKs, be prepared. Well, I've decided I certainly wish to name a dragon, but I also want to possibly name an NPC that the party will interact with fairly often. Well, good news in that regard. Where is he? This little guy I'm going to be introducing as a friendly dragon. Because you really need to have that juxtaposition of, yes, there are bad dragons, there are also good dragons, there's also dragons that are in the middle. Alignment doesn't exist in Pathfinder 2 for a very good reason, so you can just play around with the alignments. So if you want to name the friendly house drake, but back to this. I'm a class 15. Now, I tend to go along the lines of you really need to have differences between the 3 saves. There are times when you will look at it and you go, yes, this creature should have an equal reflex and will, but for the terms of this, I want to make sure that there is a highest and there is a lowest. So when that question comes up, I have an answer. Now, HP. These guys are only going to have a HP of 12. Now, the reason I'm doing this, and it's kind of important, is because like we said before, I want these to be minions, and I want them to be treated as such. Because of that, I want to be able to throw 6 against a party, and I want, when I throw 6 against a party, I want them to be falling fairly often. I want them to be able to go down in 1 or 2 hits at most. So 12 is probably the medium. I would probably even consider dropping it to 10. But in terms of the initial village attack, when I'm throwing them up against the -1 versions, they'll be even weaker. Friendly house drake henceforth shall be known as Zindov Barorush. Was my second character I made when playing D&D, and in my current game he's the bard the party saved and they have become fond of. Aw, okay. Well, let's change his name. I'm just going to copy paste that because I don't think I'm going to be able to. That Zindove. Notes. Private notes. Zindove. Also, GMs, etc., your private notes are going to save your life. These are things that the players will never be able to look at. It's just for your private stuff. So, for instance, if you have a specific pronunciation for an NPC, that's how you get it done. Yeah. Prototype token. Always remember when you change the name of an NPC, go into the prototype token, make sure you have it changed in there as well. If a Russian accent when he speaks is possible, I would appreciate it, but that's probably too much to ask. It'll be I can put it into my own personal notes, but for everyone else, I think that'll be a little bit much. Hey, Brain Beast. Hey, Sean, how you going, man? Long time no speak. Like, I can do a Russian accent. Oh, wow, what was that? I started trying for Russian and just did not work. Okay, so sometimes I can do a Russian accent. Yeah, that was not Russian, not so whatsoever. Yeah, busy as heck, knowing that. You got to name one, you're vibing hard. Well, I'm glad. Now, saving throws we have done. Hit points we have done. We don't have to worry about resistance or weakness for now. Strikes! We're going to be pretty much going down the line from moderate. We are going to give him a ranged attack as well. Now, these are both going to be the same, so 6s for both. As for damage, we're also going to be... Look, I'm going to be keeping it pretty moderate for all of these guys. And we're going to go slashing. That. Now for a ranged attack. Bear with me on this. And 0 we want D4 +2 piercing. Now, when I say spine, I mean as in like a spine from a creature. So that. And look, when it comes down to it, this is all you would need for a very basic creature. I just made it the biggest collab of my career. Okay, well, good luck with it. Is there any balance consideration to take when it comes to the 3 physical types? If you want to be spicy, and we might do it for the terms of this. Because we know how much damage we're dealing with here. And there. Thank you, it was really fun to flex my muscles, learning some new brushes and stuff in Clip Studio. Now I'm prepping for my first home game campaigns. Yes! Always love a homebrew campaign. We're starting off with some one-shots so they can try out their characters before we get into Curse Strat. Something that I've learned to appreciate running Pathfinder Society, and by running Pathfinder Society, I'm only helping run it, I'm just one of the GMs there, is how good a couple of one-shots are to actually figure out how good it is to actually, like, if you have a character concept and you're not sure if it would work for a campaign, a couple of one shots can really highlight the good and the bad parts. And this is also something I've learned doing stuff for the Podge on the Hijinks server. Just my home game? Ah, okay. Love a home base. Love a home base. But to answer your question from earlier, Jarich, consider balanced considerations to take when it comes to the freeze physical types. Because when you're dealing with players, especially at an early level, or even in general, for the most part, players won't have resistances to any damage type. If it comes up, it'll usually be to a specific energy type, particularly to fire is one that comes up a fair bit. But to the three main physical types, slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning, it doesn't really come up. So for the most part, it's not really something you have to worry about too much. As for our guys here, this is a perfectly fine minion. We're gonna add common, not Taldane, but and Draconic. I love that Draconic's common now. I remember a time it used to be rare and you had to be a wizard. But for the most part, this is our Dragon Cultist. Most of these damage types are based off of the medium or the moderate builds. There's a couple of things that are low, for instance the hit points, but as discussed earlier, I want them to be easily killable. And when we apply the weight template, you'll notice the drop. It's mostly just hits to damage, etc. Now, something you can do is I might switch the D4s out for a D6, but I'm keeping them as they are because we're going to be doing the next part of what I want to be doing with this. So, the reason I'm calling this purpose built is because you can have minions like this that are perfectly fine and well. But if you want to have a through line for your adventure and for the minions therein, you want to give them abilities that the players will learn about very quickly, will remember, and as they fight the higher level versions of those creatures, they will know what to look at. And for you as the GM, when they're doing recall knowledge checks, you know which information will be relevant and which one won't be. You could just start it off when they succeed on a recall knowledge check to say, well, these senior dragon cultists have all the abilities that you've already encountered, plus this. Or you notice that they can also do this. For the purposes of our little guys here, we are going to be giving them a lighter version of Draconic Frenzy. For those who are not aware, Draconic Frenzy is the ability to make 1 Fang Strike and 2 Stinger Strikes. This changes from dragon to dragon. It's usually 1 Bite, 1 Claw. And sometimes they will usually throw in like a Claw, a Bite, and a Tail Strike. The idea is that it's 3 strikes for the price of 2, and you apply your multiple attack penalty as usual. We are going to be giving our Dragon Cultists something very similar. See, Jarrett, you know exactly where I'm going with this. We're going to call it Dragon Cult Frenzy. It is what one would consider offensive. The Dragon Cultist makes 1. What have I've got given them a claw and a tail, so it'll be 1 tail strike. And 2 claw strikes in any order. The party will definitely be offended when you use it against them. Well, yeah. But that's something that happens often anyway. Details, actions 2. Now, because of this ability, and its ability to make 3 strikes for the price of 2, that's the big reason why I've kept their damage as low as I have. Because even if you have players who can do like early level trips or other things that do action negation, I want the creatures to be able to completely unleash. Now you'll notice that this doesn't actually affect, this does affect map, so it will be the standard hit, then -5, -10. That said, I should probably give the claw attack agile, which I will do that now. So we make that agile, and because I've done that, we need to set a difference between the tail and the claw. So the tail's going to have the d6 damage as opposed to the d4. On average, an extra 1 point of damage, but that's fine at this level. One of the things I do actually really love about Pathfinder 2nd Edition is there's a lot of ways to mitigate damage, and at lower levels, because you get hit points based on your ancestry, you have a little bit extra to work with. But this is our initial Dragon Cultist. Super simple, super basic, and as I've said a couple of times, we can make them even simpler, or we can make them more advanced. So in terms of when our players are up against us, you have 1 cultist, and you can use an elite one as a leader, or you can use a bunch of weak ones for fodder. I think the weak ones, their HP does not go down. I believe their HP should go to about 10. Off the top of my head, I don't quite remember. But I don't think they like giving them less than 10. Those are great buttons when it comes to being up or down a player. Yep, something I have learned from PFS. Every player is worth about 20 experience points when you're figuring out your encounter budget, if they're on level. And for each level they are above of the general rest of the party, you also add an extra 20. And that can be as simple as applying the elite and weak templates. Now, that said, something to be of note, and something that will be important for what we're talking about this evening with having purpose-built creatures and minions. I've given them humanoid and dragon. I've specifically given them the dragon trait. So things like if you have a Bane rune against dragons, it will work. If you have a player in your party who has taken an oath against dragons, this will also play into effect. This means that a player or a character who is really bought into the idea and the concept of the adventure will be consistently rewarded for it. I know there is a certain temptation for playing against type when you're presented with an adventure path, especially from a player perspective. But I personally like the idea of, if you tell people, hey, this is a steampunk campaign in like a fantasy western type area, there's going to be a lot of desert. And, you know, you have players who show up and they're like, yeah, no, we've absolutely bought into this. We're all like gunslingers and inventors. And then the AP has them going up against a lot of magic. I don't know, it just kind of feels shitty. At least from my perspective anyway. But that is a personal gripe I have with Outlaws of Alkenstar. Where I really think they should have hit home with the Mana Storms a little bit more. But regardless, I do understand what they were going for there. But this is our Dragon Cultist. We built that in less than half an hour. Mages of Alkenstar. God, don't get me started. Now, one of the beautiful things that I specifically love about... first things first. This is something that I often do when I'm creating a new campaign, a homebrew one in particular, is I'll create a bestiary folder for myself. For Hoist the Colors, I'm not going to show it on stream, but in Hoist the Colors I also have a bestiary folder that contains both ships and all various kinds of Arcana. It wouldn't be Pathfinder if the final boss is the caster. Well, okay. We're going to do the cultists first, but... for our next level of cultists, we're going to duplicate our guy here. Close that. Now, as I said earlier, we're going to be doing 0, 2, 4. So 2. Put that in there. This is mostly for my edification at the time. For this point, it will come along later, and I will give them titles. But that'll be something that will be done later on. We do, however, have the basis of our creature, of our minion, all ready to go for level 2. And we have a general sense of where we want everything to be. We want them to be mostly moderate across the way, and from there we can work out the extra stuff. So, we go back to our Game Master Guide. These aren't changing at all by the looks of it. They're just going to be 3s instead of 2s. Once again, attribute points don't really matter anymore. They matter for so little. And I gave them that for their perception. Most of these, from my reckoning, I think are only going to increase by 2. Because I gave them a 5 for their skills. Yep. I'm pretty sure it'll be the same for 4. No, it's the 3 jump up to 4. Okay. Jeez. So for out that 7. And 7. And I just need to double check for the strikes. Yeah, these are all going to get boosted by 2 across the board, I think. We had 6, so love it. When you start to figure out the underlying mathematics and the equations of the whole thing, so much of it just gets a lot easier. 25 hit points, my goodness. I am putting him on the higher end of low. That's fine. I don't think anyone's really going to complain. My housemate tried hijacking my Spotify. That's no bueno. Easy sorted. Alright. Hit points. That's actually changed a little bit. So, our strikes are going to be going up to +9. DA +4. Will the next upgraded versions have wings? Ooh. I think you know where I'm going to be going with this very quickly. And then our tail. DA +4. That will actually have to go up a little bit. D10, I think? D10, I think. Usually it's better to have a higher damage die that's a little bit swingier than it is to just increase the flat damage bonus. A D10 looks threatening, but it's not as bad. VG Varus! Thank you for the raid! For those of you who are coming in, my name is Obscura, or Matt, or Deaton, whichever name you want to use. I am a Pathfinder 2 GM, game designer, and storyteller. I also play video games. I think that puts me in the category of a variety streamer. For the purposes of what we're doing here tonight, I'm basically doing some like GM education and training for peoples, as we're kind of going through the idea of if you're building your own homebrew campaign, these are some of the things that you can do. D10 looks very... oh god. Where is it? 4. There we go. Because I feel like there's a lot of information out there for, you know, 10 fun ways to enhance your NPCs, but it's like, I want to help GMs make their own campaigns. Things that, tips and tricks that I've picked up over time that have really helped me out. We're currently in the process of building our default minions for the campaign, where our players will be fighting a bunch of dragons. And looks at dragon sorcerer spells and all. Yeah, okay. So, Dragon Cultist, he has the Dragon Cold Frenzy. And once again, very much like Azereth level 1, he's done. But we want to give him a new ability. So what we're gonna do, a thing with Foundry, you could write it yourself, but that's effort. We want to be doing less work, not more. This is not quite the one I'm after, because this is the one from the sorcerer, I believe. I want... do we have a crystal one? I'm considering it. What I'm really after is the one from the... what am I doing? We have our dragon. we have our Jabraxis. Now, what you can do with Foundry, I really love it. This makes it really easy. Boop. Now, of course, we're gonna have to tune that down a hell of a lot. But you can literally just drag and drop abilities from other creatures. This is a really fast and easy way if you're trying to create a creature that has a similar feeling to another one. Looks balanced. Is it the 8d6 piercing damage that looks balanced to you? But let's get our DC just quickly. We're going to be going moderate. 15. And DC equals 15. I'm gonna say... Pretty sure I know what they're gonna say for this. To that we do want to have a high modifier. Yep, so it's going to be swinging. We're going to go 4d8. 4d6, sorry. Because remember, this is for level 3. We're also going to shrink that cone down from 30 to 15. The D4 rounds... This is something that you could kind of go back. You could kind of go back and forth on, where you could go once every 10 minutes or once every D4 rounds. I'm going to leave it on the D4 rounds for now, and then with testing we'll see how we go, because that might change. But for now, 46 piercing damage. That's based on the high level damage for an area effect. Might end up dropping it a little bit, but that's fine. 15-foot code is about on par with a method. Actually, let's bring up our methods for comparison. We'll grab ice methods. One d6 cold, 1d6 piercing. So 4d6 of piercing is about good. We could probably drop that down to about 3 and be safe. Yeah, with a DC of 15 at that level, I think that's fine, because they're going to be saving more often than not. Some of the things like this are based a little bit on experience, a bit on instinct. Some things you won't be sure of. But yeah. That is our creature level 2. And much like before, we can strap on the weak if we want to have this as a lieutenant for our smaller guys. Or we can buff him up as like a general, well not general, but as a more elite bodyguard or a warrior for one of our more senior dragons. Now, because of the way that encounter building works within Pathfinder 2, with that spreader ready for 0 and 2, you have all the minions you will probably need for a 4-level campaign. Combine that with all the other dragons that you have, you will have enough fodder to kind of mix and match throughout. But someone did mention fly speeds, and that is a very good point. So we have our 2nd level dragon cultist. Time for our 4th level one. Prototype, make sure I changed it in that, because I didn't for the 2nd level one, because you know, I'm fancy like that. Now, I will do stat adjustments and things like that a little bit later. I know off the top of my head, though, that's going to be +3 for most things. So AC, I'm pretty sure will be 20 and stuff like that. Okay, not to take away from this loving the work and all, but why is it always dragons with cults? I bet dragon cultists are the popular cultists get Starbucks each day. Well, because I have my own religious trauma and I couldn't think of a different word than cult. That's mostly how it goes. And look, at least I'm not doing heaven and hell, because I feel like that's been done to death as well. Also, let's be fair. Let's be fair. Where was the last time we saw an adventure path where you were actually going up against dragons? Like, when was the last time that happened? Now, no, it's fine, but like, you never hear about giant cultists? Big worm cultists, mite cultists? Okay, mite cultists don't count. You know who's the cultist for a mite? Probably a 6-year-old. And be sure, as soon as that 6-year-old turns 7, they're probably going to be beating the shit out of the mite. Kobolds are kind of dragons. And this isn't a union. Who would pay for that adventure? Just a bunch of like 8 to 10-year-olds beating up on mites. There is a part of me that wants to write a 0th level adventure and just be beating up gremlins. I did world's smallest JRPG. When did that be? Earthbound? Isn't it? I think it's Earthbound, where you're all playing as kids. And then the boss really makes people very uncomfortable. Now, as for our higher level ones, if we are taking our inspiration from the dragon from which they serve, which is a crystal dragon named Jabraxis. Yeah, that's Earthbound, but no. Okay. The easy one, of course, is we can give them Twisting Tail as a reaction. But these are kind of, they're medium-sized. I don't really want them to have much of a reaction. God, that's terrible though. If it hits, the dragon disrupts the creature's action. Not a critical, just a general hit. So, for our more senior cultists, what we're going to do is we're going to give them a fly speed. I tend to prefer keeping them to the same. But to give them something fun to do, we're going to give them another action. And I'm going to completely screw up the wording for it. But flyby attack, 2 actions. It'll be offensive. The description, well, we're going to give it move as well because it needs move. Cultist flies. Up to its fly speed. May make on claws. Strike. Kind of sudden charge, but it's more for a flight. And the fact that they can do the strike at any point during the movement means they can move 10 feet, strike, and then move another 15 feet. It gets them out of melee very quickly. It's swoop, yes. Moto. It is essentially swoop. I think it's something that doesn't get used enough. And I think for our 4th level creatures, it's a fun and cool little ability to kind of pair up with their fly speeds. I have to adjust all their stats, but we don't really have to go into too much detail with that at the moment, because that's just doing similar upgrades to what we did with the other ones. What I did want to go into just briefly before we finish off with the minions. Sorry, my brain was like, oh, you're typing swoop? Oh, you're fine. Something I've started to mess about with in the adventures that I'm running at the moment is what I'm calling... It's not like templating, it's giving creatures extra abilities. So we're going to grab our regular cultist here. This is our default. But we're going to duplicate him. And instead of being a copy, he's going to be a caster. Thank you for the follow. Now, I've made him a caster for the pure fact that I can just go make him a spontaneous, arcane, charisma. And the system itself knows the highest rank of spell that they'll be able to cast. I'm just going to give him some basic ass spells. I'm going to give him Acid Splash. We're going to give him Shield. It is a random sorcerer. Wait for it. You'll see where I'm going with this. Acid Splash, that. Something else that'll be fun. Message for communication. We have an attack spell. We want a save-based spell. Just because I'm doing this nice and quick, I'm putting days in there. It won't stay though. I'll probably switch that out for something else. I'm only giving them the ability to cast 2 spells. We have a crystal dragon, so once again, we're going to make this nice and easy. Where is it? They've changed the names on some things, and I understand the reason behind it, but we're going to do Thunderstrike. And I want something... We're just going to do a Admonishing Ray for now. Now, I've tried to split the attack spells across AC and saves. That way our casters and things like that have a little bit of some extra spice to work with, shall we say. Now, because I've done this as a caster, this is one of the things that, if you're new to GMing, and specifically if you're new to GMing in Pathfinder 2, I super don't recommend you do this whatsoever. Let's switch me back to normal. Alright. I forgot I was still in chibi mode. One of the things I really liked about Baldur's Gate 3, and yes, there were parts of that game I did like, don't at me, was the fact that you will fight a group of 6 goblins, for instance, and amongst those 6 goblins, they're not just all fighters. You will have one will be a sorcerer, one will be a paladin. You have a mix and match of the creatures within that. I really loved that idea. And I love the idea of having variants on your various different minions and creatures. Because honestly, I feel like wizards can be minions too. Yes, actual page praise from Baldur's Gate 3. I believe wizards can be minions. I believe paladins can be minions. Why not? Let them be. So, much like our earlier example, for instance, we can have a 0th level cultist, or we can have a bunch of them, and we can pair them up with a dragon cultist that's also a caster. Now, we can look at that and go, well, the encounter balance doesn't really work, but we can instantly drop the weak template on it and it's good to go. I've tried playing Baldur's Gate 2. It did not work for me. It's too old, man. I'm so sorry. Now, one more time with healing. Yeah, I will do that. But first, we have a caster, and now we will have our champion. Chinampany! No, I want identity. Close that. I'm gonna do it while I'm thinking about it. 15. Plus 7, I think it was. Cool. I think it'll be 9. Then 17. That's fine. Those games are classics, but I spend most of the time playing those games pausing every 2 seconds. Yeah, look. There's a part of me that wants to... Like, I wouldn't mind playing some of these games on stream, but I'm just not sure how much fun they are. Or at least how much fun they are to watch. So, we have our champion. Now, what makes a champion different from the others? Not a hell of a lot. Except... where is my shields? Wooden shield. They're gonna hold that in one hand. Then we're gonna grab our shield block. Because Ray's shield is a 15 and 7 is correct for moderate for a level 2. There we go. Love it. I did put it at 15 to 9. Nope, 17. 15. 7. Done. Right. Cool. Now, our champions are going to have a shield block. That's their main difference. We are also going to do something that some people might actually be like, what the hell are you doing? But we're going to make them divine. Focus, charisma, create. They have a focus pool of 1. So we're literally just giving them a lay on hands they can use on their allies. Much like the other ones, because we can put the elite and weak templates on them, they're good to go. I don't really see the need to give them an extra weapon. We're dealing with like dragon cultists with claws and tails and things like that. Giving them things like swords and spears doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, although you can do it if you so choose. If you're going for a different theme, for instance, then absolutely go for weapons and things. But I'm really trying to drive into that vibe of these are all dragon fanboys and want to be more and more like dragons. But with this, we have casters, we have champions, we have an elite cultist. Now, if you want to recreate the same vibe, you can just drag and drop the stuff from your earlier level ones. And you can do this even if you are playing this at home at your, I was going to say the term I'm trying not to use anymore. If you're at an actual table, you can do similar things. As long as you have a good idea of what the DC is supposed to be, you're good to go. And you can give them certain abilities. Like give these creatures, like give the 4th ones with the flyby attack a shield block. That would annoy the hell out of so many people. We're going to fly 25 feet, then we're going to shield block after doing a claw strike. But keep in mind that action economy also matters for your minions and for your creatures. And in some points, it's going to mean a hell of a lot more. All that said, meat space, flesh space, that kind of thing. I've had a couple of people go, hey, that's kind of gross. Could you stop saying that in public? It's like, okay, fine. I see how it is. Especially since I am actually running a lot more flesh-based games at the moment. Especially with PFS. And I've been playing Warframe, which has Deimos, which is pretty much a flesh planet, so... So some people can ask that of you. Anyone can ask that of me, whether I respond or not. Whether it actually works or not, that's a different thing. I'm trying to be a better person, okay? Jeez, calling me out on stream like this. Before I move on... This space game is cool. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions about doing minions or plebs or whatever you want to call them? Your rank and file members for whatever it is you're doing. Because for the most part, once you have a general gist of the vibe that you're going for, it gets pretty easy. The casting, you can throw that onto your 0th level cultist as well if you super want. They will only have cantrips, but that's fine. Cantrips can be fun, especially if they start breaking out the shield at 1st level. It's just like, ah. And give them a 1 or 2 1st level spells. I would suggest grabbing core spells like Magic Missile, because that's always a fun feeling when the wizard actually gets to use counterspell. At some point, I will have to get pictures for our little guys here. Is there anything that lets you know that a minion you're making should probably be upgraded to a lieutenant or some such? So the general advice that they give you in the GM's guide and in the core books as well is it's usually 1 lieutenant and 2 minions. And it's also a case of, so in that point, I would probably grab 2 of the 0th and 1 of the 2nd and be done with it. Is there anything But to answer your question, it's usually a case of abilities. The more actions you give them, like these ones down here, the more they're probably more higher ranked. If you want to emulate something like a lieutenant, you can give them attack of opportunity. That'll be a nice surprise for them. Just make sure you broadcast that this is not a standard minion. This is someone special. Otherwise, if you want them to be a little bit stronger, a little bit more powerful, the best thing you can probably do is upgrade their hit points. I don't like messing around with armor class too much beyond the moderate. There are some creatures that would benefit from having a higher armor class, but at the same point, I'm probably more inclined just to give them resistances. Because ideally for the best, I don't want to say flavor, the best experience for a player is that they're going to be hitting consistently. Ideally, unless it's like a severe encounter or an important set piece fight, most combats will not last beyond 4 rounds. So it is best to plan around that. By the time our players are reaching level 2, they should have access to their first things I could only wish. Yeah. Look, I can't do anything about dice rolls, okay? That's not within my own purview. I do apologize. But before we finish up for the night, resistance is a fun negating some damage makes it feel like the enemy is trained to you or has evolutionary advantages. Yes. For instance, if I was going to be doing like a lieutenant thing with our dragon cultists, resistances is something that I would probably strike on in order to represent the draconic scales thing. Jabraxis is a crystal dragon, so I'd probably make him resistant to bludgeoning. Actually, probably resistant to everything except bludgeoning, now I'm thinking about it. Except picks, because apparently you can do resistances where it's like, except for these weapons. These weapons, they do extra damage. I'm looking at you, treants. But we're going to create a new journal entry because we're going to go for very simple, very basic archetype design. This is something that I did a lot of for the Almanac. Not simple archetype design, advanced archetype design. I designed a lot of archetypes. I still do a lot of them. As someone playing a tree axes is scary, I'm not weak to them or anything, but every time I forget one script me, well, you have to wonder when the universe is trying to tell you something there, yeah? Now, the specific style of archetype we're going to be talking about is what I call campaign or adventure path archetypes. These are archetypes where you probably wouldn't see them much use outside of the context of the adventure that the players are currently in, but is something that players would absolutely consider and would fit well for the adventure path. There are examples of this that work really well. There are examples of this that are just terrible and you wonder why they were even thinking about it. For instance, in the Agents of Edgewatch Adventure Path, they have the Edgewatch Detective archetype, which makes a lot of sense. It gives them some thematic abilities that kind of go along with the idea of these are police doing police type things. Here's some abilities they can have that make sense for that kind of feeling and that kind of theme to kind of go along with that. Sometimes it doesn't make sense whatsoever. I don't want to keep banging on about Outlaws of Alkenstar, but slight spoilers for Outlaws of Alkenstar. the archetype in the back of the first book for Outlaws of Alkenstar is a Alkenstar detective or an Alkenstar cop of some sort, and it gives you cop abilities in Outlaws of Alkenstar. I feel like an outlaw archetype would be a lot better for it. But that's just me. I'm not salty. It's fine. So, we are going to create our notes for our Dragon Hunter archetype. And much like our meta for the adventure itself, are you saying cops and criminals are one and the same? No, absolutely not. In Agents of Edgewatch, you're playing as cops. In Outlaws of Alkenstar, you're playing as outlaws. Or at least you're supposed to be. That's the idea you get presented with, anyway. But, regarding our Dragon Hunter archetype, we're going to do this much in the same way that we would do when we're approaching the meta for our campaign, or for writing out our campaign, in which we're going to start off with the meta, which will be hunting dragons, and that gives us a general idea of the kind of feats that we want and how we want to start off the dedication for it. So, macro will be a dedication. Then we go from our dedication. We want something that will help with finding dragons, tracking them down, that kind of thing. The dedication probably could start off with that, but with usually with the adventure path archetypes, they don't give you something so powerful as hunting prey. So we're probably going to have a variant as a higher level feat. That said, hunt prey, but for dragons. So that covers the hunting part of things. Damage detection. Something fun. Additional feats is something that a lot of archetypes get, that a lot of people, especially when designing their archetypes, will actually ignore, but can make a lot of sense. In this particular instance, we're going to be, I can't remember the actual name for it, but it'll be the champion feat, Oath Against Dragons. It'll basically mean at level 4, players who pick up this archetype will gain access to Oath Against Dragons, which will allow them to do a little bit of extra. I have to look this up though, because I have to see whether you can separate it from the champion class at all, because it might just immediately tie into things like Smite, so it might not work. I'm hoping it will. But this is all kind of about figuring out basic ideas. Is for the champion reaction. Alright, so it might be a case of hunt prey but for dragons. So we'll have something for tracking, and then we'll have something for the attacking. Ooh, actually. Dragonbane Strike. Now, because this is planned as a kind of only a 4 levels, all we really need is about 3 feats. The idea of an adventure path archetype is that it's supposed to fit on 1 page. So you don't want more than 4 at most feats. And I'm really not going to be going much beyond that myself. So, we have our notes. This is more for bookkeeping type of things, but feats. We can close that. Just gonna minimize that. Creating items in Foundry. Go to your little briefcase thing for items, create item. We're going to be creating a feat. Dragon Hunter dedication. Now, the writing I'm going to be using for a bunch of this is going to be super rough. I'm not going to be doing very clean, very concise writing because we're mostly doing this for the purposes of demonstration. Archetype, dedication, that's cool. So, usually how the dedication feats work is that it will give you it'll make you trained in a skill. Can I use the name that NPC reward to name a feat? If you want. I'm not gonna say no. Level 2. So, our archetype dedication feats usually will make you trained in a skill, and then will make you trained in a lore of some sort. This is pretty obvious for our Dragon Hunter dedication. God, if Sean watches this later, he's gonna kill me. Brilliant. Oh God. I will say, we're doing this for a specific purpose, for making archetypes for your own personal homebrew games and stuff like that. But if at some point people want me to go into the deeper details for making a full archetype, like one of the big ones like the Draconic Disciple, or if you have access to Sinclair's Almanac, the Iron Titan archetype or the Arsenal Mage, let me know if that's something people are interested in the future, and I will consider it. But skill proficiencies for our Dragon Hunter dedication, we're going to go, obviously, Dragon Lore. I would specify within the entry itself. And followers of dragons as well. This Dragon Hunter archetype will be in this campaign. My name is interested. Oh, okay. I will stop putting notes down for something more extensive than what I'm doing here. Can be used on followers of dragons. Now, as for being trained in a different skill, you want something that makes sense, but also is not too useful. It's rare that you'll find something that's like, yeah, no, you become trained in athletics, unless it's specifically designed for instance, there's the acrobat archetype, which makes you trained in acrobatics, as you would imagine. And there's also things like Tyrant Wrestler. That is usually outside of the breadth for a adventure path archetype such as this. It usually just gives you a very specific lore skill and something of magic to go along with it. Because I have kind of put down our casters for the most part as arcane, they're also going to make you trained in arcane. Now, thanks to the remaster, we no longer have to worry about the dedication special. That's just built into the fact of the dedication trait itself. But once you kind of deal with the skill proficiencies, then you kind of have to give them an extra special thing, something to front loaded, but it's not too powerful. an important thing, and this is something that my editor that I had while doing a bunch of the design work for the almanac, is that the dedications are not supposed to be too powerful. As powerful as you may think they should be, they're supposed to be the gateway. They're supposed to be the way that gives you access to all the other fun stuff. Especially when you're thinking about in terms of free archetype, you don't want the dedication to be too strong or too powerful, because then you run into a similar problem that they run into with 5e a lot when you start going into multi-classing, where it only takes grabbing one level and all of a sudden your character just becomes way too powerful way too quickly. So, and specifically in regards to our Dragon Hunter dedication, I know I said something along the lines of, hey, we can't give them hunt prey to begin with, but we can do something a little bit similar. Technically speaking, you could probably just grab the wording from hunt prey altogether, but the Battle Rouge Hunter dedication. While Zindave as a character strove to exclude himself from his family's corruption, prided itself on having a diverse bloodline with many colors. Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Let me finish writing this and I'll put that in. +1 circumstance. When tracking dragons or followers of dragons. And Baharush. I became a GM and vetoed my original DM's veto. Alright. And separate from doing proper cleanup, that's supposed to be circumstance. That's fine. Apart from doing the proper cleanup, I would look at other archetype dedications that do similar things. I'm not sure if it's becoming obvious, but I am quickly starting to run on fumes, so I am going to have to tie this up pretty quickly. But that is the basics of all you would need for a dedication. They get trained in 2 things. If they're trained in one of them, they become trained in something else instead, and something that gives them a bonus for survival checks. You could probably add initiative to that and be fun as well. I do not want a repeat of Season of Ghosts last week. That is our dedication. I'm out of NPC naming. Have a good night. I'll be saving up again for more in the future. Aww. I'll fight you? Why are you fighting me? I misspelled that. Alright. Baruch Strike. Yeah, I don't know, I heard my game. Okay. Baruch. There we go. Nah. Who'd win, Mata or Obscura? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. Look, I wouldn't want to fight Mata in 100 years, 1,000 years. I would never want to fight Mata. That's not a fight I want to show up for. I don't care if I would win or lose. You're supposed to be a class feat. technically speaking. Now, we know the prerequisite for this would be our Baharush Hunter dedication. But this is going to be an action. 2. Oh no, I thought about this. You'd win, I wouldn't show up. Yeah, my problem with fighting, well, if it's Mata specifically, if Deaton were to fight Mata, I wouldn't want that fight because Mata would just keep coming the fuck back. Can't keep the bitch down. Now, a specific strike, there's got to be an instinct where you want to go something like power attack. It's where I would probably go. It's where my mind is going at the moment. Make a strike against a dragon. Against a creature with the dragon trait. Nice, simple, easy to go. This is power attack, but with a greater point of access. You're fighting dragons, roll an extra die of damage versus them. This is for the people who are wanting to be a little bit more aggressive, because they are going to be fighting a lot of dragons throughout the entire adventure, or throughout the entire campaign. Because it has, I would consider putting Flourish on here, but considering the specificity and the fact that it's 2 actions to begin with, it doesn't really need to. Considering, would 1 action attack without a benefit from Bane Room versus Dragon be good at this level? The main issue we're looking at is the level 4. Because this is one of the problems with a Adventure Path archetype. Because you're dealing with a lower level, or at least a lower point of access. There's only so much that you can put in with the same thing. But you bring up an interesting point. So let's have a look. It's not Beast Ray browser, but it's fine. I'm just gonna clear the filters, equipment. Okay, so Bane is level 4. So theoretically, at level 4, you could just have the Bane built into the weapon. Though that does give me a different idea. But it's one of the points of balance within Pathfinder 2nd Edition where it either costs a feat or costs equipment. Considering the information that the players know that they're going to be fighting a lot of dragons, I would be assuming that they would be going for things like Dragonbane runes and Dragonbane ammunition from the get-go. Like, that would be my default expectation. I would even be probably putting it in treasure bundles for them. I would even be considering putting recipes for that stuff in there. This is one of the things that I've learned from Hoist the Colors. When you have a singular creature that has a through line for the adventure, funnily enough, players will figure out the best strategies to beat them. Funny how that works. And encounters where you're expecting them to be a lot more dangerous than they are, from the GM side of things, turn out to be a little bit more manageable because the players know how to deal with the character in question or the creature in question. With Hoist the Colors, it is the idea of the Akata are weak to salt, so our players always have ready access to salt. What? Your players are building around Akatas? Who'd have thunk? And that's the thing. I like the idea of being able to reward players for that. So giving our archetype something that goes along with the side of Bane, I'm less inclined to. Considering the power attack variant we're giving them, and that they would probably have Bane as well, it's probably going to be fine. That. So, as for another feat or an alternative feat, because you should have at least 3 feats for an archetype, so they have enough to actually get out of it again. We have a basic dedication one. We have our strike. We need one more. A defensive feat. Either defensive or... we're gonna call it something dumb for now. Bear with me here. God, what would I call it? We're gonna go coal for now. The idea will be that this is a skill type feat or a skill enhancer that they can use. So for our guys, they want to be able to be good at hunting dragons. So being able to have the psychological advantage against them also is helpful. Particularly when you're dealing with dragons and a lot of them have the aura for the frightful presence. So for the purposes of this, make it demoralize. For the purposes of this demoralize, up to 120 feet. Because I want them to be able to demoralize at a longer range to deal with dragons that are flying. And the idea of the call is you let out a screeching call or a call or a sound of some sort that reaches deep within the dragon's psychology and causes them to be afraid. To share a language. For this to function. God, my writings are good. Meaning they don't need to know Draconic. Looking back on it, I would probably put the dedication would probably front load the Draconic language as well. Just because it would make sense for the purposes of what we're doing. At least a master. Have this every dragon within 30 feet. Just as an alternative. And that's kind of all you really have to do. I would consider strongly the theming you're doing for the campaign. Additional feats. There's an interesting thing that I found out reading one of the archetypes recently where you can have the additional feats that, granted, only affect certain things or certain conditions, like these additional feats only work if you're wielding a two-handed weapon. That is something that has come up once or twice when reading through other archetypes. This is an interesting way of covering your desire of wanting Roar X3 as a feat. Well, yeah. Grr. Arg. But I'm not sure how helpful that particularly has been. I have learned something about myself. I'm not doing an Uwu archetype. I think someone else has already beaten me to it. You could easily do the argument that it'd be a skill feat instead. I wouldn't argue with it, for instance. I definitely wouldn't argue with it. I have learned something, though. I can't do 2 streams in one day, so my schedule for next week will be adjusted accordingly. I have taken note of the interest in going a little bit more in depth into archetype design. There are some aspects of building an archetype that I do want to go into. I just think I'm kind of in the wrong mindset for it. Also, as I said at the start of the stream, I don't really want to push this further than I really should. Like, we've already been going for over an hour and a half. I'm pretty happy with that. But before I close up, does anyone have any questions about either the minions or the archetypes or anything like that? Even just general design stuff for writing your own campaigns for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I will say I'm not sure if I'll be back doing this next Wednesday. I'm currently talking with a couple of people for starting up a new stream game. That's going to be surprising for 1 or 2 people. Nope, 1 help farming though. Yes, I'm in talks with a couple of people. I know more people than just you, G-Wizzer. But Rusthenge has recently become available on Foundry. I'm considering writing it for a couple of peeps who are new to Pathfinder 2, who want to get a little bit more involved in it, but want a better introduction to it. So having me run a couple of people through Rusthenge, which is only like level 1 to 4, I think will be helpful to a bunch of people. But yes, I do want help farming, particularly in Warframe. That's probably what I'm going to be doing after this. Beginner Box 2.0. I'm not sure if that's what they're going for with Rusthenge. I kind of want to read it out and see whether that is what they're driving at, though. It might very well be possible the case. Particularly, I think it's post-remaster as well. Like, I get the feeling a bunch of the writing for it was probably done beforehand, but Beginner Box Remaster Edition. I think that might be what they're going for with Rusthenge. I don't 100% know, though. I actually really want to look at it. Because before Menace Under Atari, it was Plagueful, which I have a very uncomfortable background with. Because I tried running it and it really did not go well. Connects to Absolution Locker. Maybe. We'll find out. Otherwise, we are going to start setting up that raid. Full of Plaguestone, that's it. Yeah, Dwarf's online. We're gonna raid into him. He's currently playing Elden Ring. I think he's doing his Deathless runs at the moment. But he's one of the people I want to convince to run. I want him to be a player for Rusthenge. So if you can give him a poke about that when we raid in, I would super appreciate it. Raid the dwarf. But yeah, Full of Plague Stone can be a little bit of an off because it was one of the initial adventures, and a lot of people didn't really know how to. We're still figuring out Pathfinder 2nd Edition and the balances and stuff like that. I think if it was rewritten now, it'd be a lot better. It'd be a lot more different. But this is one of the things where I want to look at Rusthenge. As for other news and announcements, I'm looking at getting Gatewalkers up and running. It's proving a little bit more tricky than I thought, but I'm still wanting to do that. Schedules will be adjusted as I'm getting used to all this. I probably won't be doing 2 streams in one day again, as mentioned previously. But tomorrow morning I will be back here at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time for my return to Gallospire Survivors. We're just going to play it for an hour or two. It's been a couple of months since I've actually played it, so I want to see how it's changed and how it's going in its early access. Otherwise, socials, that worked awesome. Be sure to look me up on all the socials. This will be going up on YouTube within like 48 hours or something to that effect. I might see about editing some of it down so it's a little bit less rambly. Otherwise, we're taking off. Remember, we're the storytellers. Goodbye!